next one for hundreds and hundreds of pages, which is a difficult operation. And I've done this with many texts over many centuries. And I think that there is a constant awareness of the kind of difficulty you're talking about among these proponents of human reason. I think you're still completely within the bounds of reason. Eliot said, T.S. Eliot, as my quotation at the beginning, humankind cannot bear very much reality. And that's certainly true. But scientists and people trained to think have to try to bear as much as possible. That's the whole point of Nietzsche's entire philosophy, is the importance of some people at least being willing to face what is actually real and try to deal with it and teach the rest of us about it. So I think that you're still very much within the realm of reason in practically everything you said. Who doesn't understand that our answers are partial? That we aren't sure always of what's going on. Who's to know whether nuclear weapons will be used, exchanged between Pakistan and India tomorrow? Who's to know? These are terrible things. What can stop them? We have to trust that human reason finally will decide that these are too irrational to occur. But that's no guarantee. It's a dangerous world.
Any further questions between the two of you?
Rich, maybe this sounds like a stupid question, but how do you define faith and how do you define reason? What's your criteria for defining rationality?
This came up during your talk, and I thought then, I was going to ask you a question about this. You said at the beginning, you were talking about rationality, and it was very interesting. And you said there's no agreed on definition of reason. And I jotted down here, but see the works of Plato, Spinoza, Kant, Hegel, etc. In other words, it is in working with the texts of reason that one begins to see and learn what reason is. There is not, I wouldn't think, a really satisfactory dictionary definition of reason, although we might have to begin with such a thing. It is actually learning to use it and using it and living with it and living it, that this great human faculty, the best thing we have, that we learn about reason.
So how can we answer the question?
Read Socrates, read Plato rather, read Spinoza, read Kant, read Hegel, study Einstein, study the uncertainty principle, and you end up, it's a series, a kind of series of methods, but it is completely human. Spinoza argues that there are three levels of reason. A very simple one, kind of arithmetic, and then a second one, which he called instrumental, which is what most scientists use and think about and talk about when they talk about reason. And a third kind he called intuitive reason, which is where, based on knowledge built up painfully over years, one can intuit some things, not leap to them, but intuit them based on knowledge about the nature of the universe. And this can gain us partial knowledge of some things, but never whole knowledge. So this would be his way of talking about reason.
Did you call it rational intuition? What was the term?
It's intuition based on knowledge.
Yeah, intuition is a pretty interesting thing. So you argued that intuition is reason condensed, or how would you?
Intuition is, I would say that a good example of this, Einstein is was a Spinozist thinker. When he said that God does not play with dice, he was talking about Spinoza's God, the natural universe. And I would say that when he developed the theory of relativity, about which I know actually nothing, in any technical sense, I'm just an English professor after all, that was the operation of this third motive, reason or intuitive reason. But because he thought of things that no one else had put together before, it was based on painfully acquired knowledge over many years of a brilliant man. And that is the third kind of reason at work. There's no leap of faith involved.
So then what's your definition for faith? I define it as a set of beliefs, but you're using it.
I think that faith is the belief that there is a transcendental divinity and a benevolent providence that direct the world and somehow guard it and keep it.
Okay, so...
that's just off the top of my head.
So, the belief in a supernatural and a transcendent being is an essential element of faith.
Yes.
Okay. Well, and I certainly included in the set of beliefs that I've proposed there. Why the primacy of reason? What special epistemic privilege does reason have over other ways of knowing? And well, I guess this comes back to the definition of reason, which is still pretty unclear to me, Rich. I'm sorry. But are you including in reason empiricism? So I'm not talking about reason. I'm not talking about pure rationalism.
See, you'd have to. There is the Anglo-American empirical tradition, and that's one kind of way of thinking. There's the kind of German tradition, which is kind of rational, idealism essentially. It's usually called Kant and Hegel, the very founders of all modern philosophy. And then there's the French rationalism that derives from Descartes, and there are other traditions too. These are all kind of examples of approaches to reason, uses of reason, but they're very different from each other. And they may inform each other, but they're at the same time different from each other.
So again, I ask the question, what gives reason this epistemic privilege that it is the ultimate, the final authority on knowledge?
It is not the ultimate or final, it is the best we have, and the best we ever will. There is nothing ultimate or final except the end of things. And of course, things will go on beyond that too.
So, we certainly disagree about what we believe. But do you think that our epistemologies have anything in common?
Well, they obviously diverge on the question of faith and reason. And they diverge on the question of where morality comes from. And I think these things are socially constructed. The human personality, I believe, is socially constructed and so forth. It's a very complex kind of historical phenomenon. So we disagree on all of these points, I would think. But basically, it's the idea of the transcendental, I think, would be the main point of difference between us. Is that I have come...
That's content. That's not epistemology. I'm talking about form. I'm talking about what we would agree, if anything, on what's a valid approach to knowledge.
Well, I'm sure that we would agree on a lot of things along the way. I mean, you're a scientist.
And we're both Buckeyes.
We're both Buckeyes. We have some disagreements. But no, that's true. No, we would have lots of points of agreement. But I would part company from you, though, and I think it's epistemic as soon as faith became the operative principle or the assumption on which you were thinking.
I think we're working sort of at cross purposes, and we're defining faith in different ways. You're defining faith as an approach to knowledge. I'm defining faith as a state of knowledge, an epistemic state as opposed to an epistemic process.
I think that, if I can, I don't mean to make fun, but I was thinking about this earlier, about this idea of a coherent, internally coherent system and so forth in the statement of the problem. I could probably, given time and enough wakefulness and wit, I could probably construct an internally coherent system to prove that green pigs with wings control the universe for malevolent purposes. And that would be very logical, but it wouldn't have a thing to do with existent reality.
That's right, you're basically talking about mathematics.
I wouldn't do that.
Well, no, you're absolutely right there. In fact, I said that I believe that I could argue that the Christian faith, the road to Christian faith, is consistent and internally coherent. But I didn't prove. I wasn't proving tonight that the beliefs of Christianity are true. The reason does not compel us to believe in it. So I agree with you there. But, and in fact, that's in a sense where, well, two things come in. And the first is empirical justifiability. So, green pigs in the universe and malevolent purposes. I mean, we want to have some sort of empirical validation for that. Any rational argument, I think, we would agree needs some sort of empirical justification. Right. And I presented some reasons why at least some of us believe that there's empirical justification for certain beliefs in Christian faith. So,
well, I don't think, I would disagree with you about there being convincing evidence for
convincing,
the literal, well,